This one feels a lot more universal, at least in this small part of the universe I, and many of you, call home. It's footy season, meaning society is well and truly back in action, so no better time to indulge the nation and my own sensibilities, of course, than with the greatest sport in the world, Australian football. This is I Love episode 7. I love Australian football. Enjoy. Look, I don't throw acclamations of the best around lightly. I love a lot, meaning it's a boiling hot competition for top spot. But without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, this deserves residence at the pinnacle. The variety really does a lot to enforce its case. It may as well be like football, and football all wrapped into one. I mean, it's got the pure strength, grit, toughness, and raw athletic ability like American football and rugby, with brutal tackles, slick, evasive ability, snapping ankles, sending people flying to Yucatan, or just stiff-arming, fending off opponents. Then, like soccer, it just oozes slickness through pure skill and thoughtful tactic and strategy. A steady mind under the utmost pressure is the difference between greatness and class, or being a has-been looking lost at sea. And you can really see that. You can really tell greatness. You can feel the difference between the people who dominate and who are going to be legends and who is going to be there and gone. And on top of those sports, it's distinctly similar to Gaelic football through rules, playstyle, and even players, and it's weirdly got a lot of parallels with ultimate frisbee in running patterns, passing, and tactics. And now I think that variety all comes together to make it just such an enjoyable watch. You feel like it's not too easy to pick up. You really do have to think about what you're getting yourself into. Each play and each player can truly offer a distinct set of skills, and you don't have to be forged into one box. There's no archetype. There's no perfect archetype for greatness. There's just all these different things that you could maximize to become a star. And I think that's different to other sports where there is probably more of a playbook. Obviously, there's things you have to tick, but not everything is so varied like it is here. It's so non-linear. It's so inviting to people to, look, come and see. This player is a difference maker in a different way. The sport is a maker of differences. And you can come together over that. And you see the scoring rate is something I find that goes under the radar a bit. But I think comparatively to other sports, it's in a really nice Goldilocks zone of tension and attention. Scoring happens a lot less often than in basketball, tennis, cricket, etc., ensuring that the monumentous feelings that are up from managing the score are maintained, with huge celebrations from one goal alone, whilst managing to avoid the monotony and dreariness that can come through watching NFL, rugby and soccer due to fundamental slowness in the scoreboard ticking upwards. It feels better, it works better, satiating the mind and loins in a satisfying manner, more so than any other sport has to offer. It feels very relevant to the current cultural climate, with social media and just dopamine hit after dopamine hit after dopamine hit. Maybe that's not the best thing to indulge in overly. However, with a sport, that's just the game, and it's the sport of the modern era, because it hits that balance. It's always something happening. It's not all about the scores. You've got tackles constantly. You've got great action. You've got highlights that can happen without the basket needing to be filled. I think it's really nice in that way. Any spot on the ground, something magical can happen. To be fair though, out of all the I love so far, this must be my most biased, and easily. The sport is just so ingrained, so essential, so fundamental to my life. If you take a look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for myself and millions of people alike, there is a tier that is formed before even physiological needs. A tier more foundational to a successful human experience than breathing, food, water, shelter, clothing, and sleep. That tier is football. Because without the exhaustive sprints end to end on what can only be described as heaven in the form of an oval, routinely performing the most miraculous acts of athleticism because of maintaining a stamina that you quickly forget is well different to the norm, how would I be able to get to sleep? If I couldn't walk around in little leather boots with spikes that are very different to stereotypical leather boots with spurs, whilst repping extremely fashionable short shorts and shirts that shouldn't surprise you with their ability to make one's shoulder look stupendous, how would I ever even know what clothes to wear? If I couldn't cover within the barricades and holes of a 100,000-seated concrete Goliath fit for all seasons and spectators that take stage as potentially the greatest sporting location in the world, would I really have a place worthy of subjecting as my shelter? If there was no squirting bottles being run out to me by a helper wearing a vibrantly coloured bib, how would I know what to drink? If I couldn't stumble across never-ending lanes of hot chips and scalding meat pies, how would I know what food to consume? If I didn't have football, how would I breathe? And it's an air I've been breathing my whole life. Since before I had consciousness, I had already been indoctrinated into support of the Adelaide Crows, and therefore deep roots had been grown and firmly placed with no ability to be cut out. They're just too deep. So that by the time I was awake to football's presence, I was already all too well placed to unhealthily jump from the highs and crash with the lows. It's awful, and it's so beautiful at the same time, And that's what footy is. It can all grow back in an instant, it can all go away in an instant. And it's so dangerous, but it's the danger that fuels you, That's the fire. That's energy being created from nothing. It's impossible, and yet it's true. And I will get into that deeply toxic relationship, which also happens to be ultimately the most fulfilling part of my life sometimes. And next week, as we dive into the Crows. Shout out right to South Australia. But until that time, I'll have to bite my tongue a little bit harder. The first ever game I remember going to was Brisbane vs Collingwood in what must have been 2009. I was only 3 years old, and yet the natural inclination that any sensible human being would rise with pure disdain for the Magpies had already been developed healthily within me, and was coming to fruition here. As I remember leaving that game with a particular anguish at the sight of a Collingwood victory. These feelings are ever present to this day. And look, I'd say at least 50% of my good friends are Pie supporters too. It's cooked, deeply unsettling, and it just manages to exacerbate the frustration of seeing them win and make one really want to stew in the mess of seeing them lose. Again, deeply unhealthy from a face value mental health application point of view, however, extremely rewarding from a rage-bait, tall poppy inclined, I love to hate perspective, which this sport really brings people together over. Rarely ever splitting the bill between fans of the 18 teams, instead, more often than not, rendering one team after tense moments and matches each week, as Uma Thurman and Kill Bill for that week's Football World soap opera, drama, rearing discussions, until the baton is inevitably passed to someone else, and we all forget we are even frustrated about the week prior. No more accurate personification of the phrase last week's news exists than AFL and AFL media. It truly does produce the perfect tension in surrounding the game week to week, leaving you on the edge of your seat, not just by virtue of exhilarating match play, but by the pantomime build-up, by talking heads who live for it, and fans who, and I say this with firm real-world accounts, would not know how to form a thought without it. I'd like to discuss my own ventures of playing the sport, though I feel like for now, leaving more mystique on my temporarily paused playing career, letting the dust settle in, allowing my thoughts gather as I take more time away from the first-person blood, sweat and tears of the game that I love more than anything. Has it let me down? Have I let it down? Has it been deeply formative in my worldview and approach to life? Does its scars leave me with the right amount and the right kind of motivation to achieve the heights in life I know myself to be in a state of sooner rather than later? What kind of success would ever be enough to heal those formative moments of football pain? Or is that simply the cost of greatness? Will I ever learn to love again? What is my maximum? How often have I ever really given 100%? How different is my performance as a football player or a person in general if Chase Jones never existed? Will Chase Jones ever work out? How quickly would I be in a full kit and training once more if Sadie Singh told me to? What wouldn't I do if Sadie Singh told me to? Yeah, I think that's I don't know if there's much more to say on football for now, but I think this is the kind of topic I'd come back to again and again and again. Very ritualistic. They say it's like a religion in Melbourne, so whatever that's meant to mean. Anyway, leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, whatever your proclivity. Just remember, you're my proclivity. Yeah, thank you.